If you do have that faulty internet connection, feel free to call in using your Zoom audio for your phone. And with that, I'm going to start us off with a couple beginning polls that we like to start off every webinar with. And I'm going to launch those now. So that first poll is just which partner do you best represent? If you represent Title I, Title II, Title III, Title 4 or 5, or other WIOA partners and stakeholders, we would like to know. So I'll give everyone a second to go ahead and answer that. Okay, and then I'm going to end that poll and share the results. So we have quite a few people joining us from Title I today, which is great. And then one more poll, if you could bear with us. We would like to know where your local area is. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and end that poll now and share the results. So we have people joining us from all over the state today, mostly from Northern Illinois and Chicago. So welcome everyone. We appreciate you spending this Wednesday morning with us. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Bevan Gibson, to introduce our speakers for today.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Wednesday webinar on testing. And we have two different sides of testing today, one being remote and one being in person. Our first presenter for today is Mary Lloyd she's the operations director for Elgin Community College and adult education. And so she's going to talk to us about remote testing that Elgin is doing. And then our second presenters are from LWIA 7, Charles Townsend, who is the LWIA 7 Center Director, Amelia Jackson, who is the Business Service Rep, and Dennis Bird, who is the Associate Career Coach. We ask that we'll take questions at the end of Mary's presentation, and then we'll take questions at the end of LWIA 7's presentation. So Mary, with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Bevan. Thank you, Kirsten. Welcome, everyone. Basically today, I'm going to talk about testing in the virtual world. So when COVID-19 hit and we were told to stay home, post-testing was upon us and no tools to do virtual testing. None of the test publishers had created anything virtual or remote. Then the scramble to figure all of this out. Then the realization that there was a new normal: mask, social distancing, 6 feet apart or more, no face-to-face, no testing. So we waited for further instructions. Nothing really settled in until after July 1. So now the shift in thinking, the shift in processes, and getting students to climb aboard. So here is where we are. And I want to go through 4 different things: what we are doing now, what processes we're using, how it's going, and successes, tips, and challenges. Next slide. Currently, I would like to know, this is a question, a poll question. Currently, how are you doing testing? Face-to-face, remote testing only, combination of face-to-face and remote testing, or currently not doing testing?
And they can post their questions in the Q&A.
Yep, if you could go ahead and post your answers to that option in the Q&A or the chat. Okay, Mary, it seems we have a lot of people saying currently not doing testing, a combination, not testing right now. No testing right now. Will attempt soon. Remote only. Some are saying a combination. Bevan,
Okay.
are you seeing anything else?
No, that's exactly what I'm seeing. A combination or not testing at this time, and then a combination of in-person and remote. Triton is doing that. So anyway, that's kind of where we're at with it.
Thank you for your responses. Next. Okay. What we're doing at this point, well, we started out with the testing when we knew we had to do this in a virtual world, when we knew the publishers were up and ready to go. We started meeting with the staff regularly, and I have a staff of about 8, and we talked through the processes that we'd be using to test students remotely. And in addition to that, we also talked about our remote or virtual registration and intake process. Right now, we're testing students remotely by appointment only. So I have staff out there that are creating appointment times for the students. Students have to make the appointment and then show up for the appointment. We are now at the point, we just started testing students face-to-face on a limited basis on appointment only. We've had some, but we have a lot of students that don't want to come to campus and they don't want to be testing face-to-face because they don't want to come in contact with other people. So we've had a lot of learning to do. And then lastly, being patient as we teach students how to set up for testing. One of the things that we've learned over this period of time for the last 4 months is that a lot of our students don't have the computer savviness to be able to do a Zoom meeting or to do much more, to do the testing and all of the parameters that the testing requires of each individual person. Next slide. Thank you. The processes that we're using we use CASA's testing, CASA's goals testing. And we do remote testing and we can do it one-on-one, which is one person to one test proctor, with or without remote control. And what that means is that we have students who have like a Mac and we have to we can only do one person at a time. The other one is where the individual can take over your computer to answer the questions. So either way, it's tying up a computer and a staff person for about 2 hours per student. Then we have remote testing with multiple testers using breakout rooms. And this is where we do the remote testing, but we can test up to 5 people. And we can put the individual students into separate breakout rooms where they can take the test, and then the proctor is going between the breakout rooms to check on them and make sure that they're doing fine with the testing. And then we use the testing center for face-to-face, and they also help us with remote testing. So we've had to do training, we've had to get certified. There's been a lot of stuff that we've had to do up to this point. And so being flexible when these changes occur, in the beginning, there were changes happening every couple weeks, every couple days. So we had to keep up with all of that. Now it's kind of settled a little bit, but still we're finding that there are changes and we need to be very flexible when it comes to the changes. Next slide, please. How's it going? The learning curve has been incredible for everyone. Things that we never thought we would be doing, things that we never even thought were possible. We've learned how to do those things. We've had to learn how to be patient. We've had to learn how to allow time for each individual person. You know, when you talk to a student face-to-face, you can do it in about 15 minutes. When you're doing it on the computer, you could do it in an hour. Depends on the individual. And now at this point, for the most part, we've been successful in getting students tested. They've been able to set up the Zoom meetings, then they've been able to work through the process of what each one of those needs are. But of course, along with that, there's been frustrations that have been felt by everyone. And we just have to kind of go, okay, take a deep breath, and we're going to move on, and we're going to overcome this. Next slide, please. Our successes. We're a program usually of about 1,000 students per semester. And we usually have come in contact with between 2,500 and 3,000 students that come in and want to sign up for classes, and then for one reason or another, don't end up following through the process. So I'm happy to say that we've tested a large portion of the population that has come in. Our numbers are way down, so it's been kind of easier. You know, we haven't had 3,000 people come knocking at the door because everything has had to be virtual and has had to be online. We've become troubleshooters for any and all testing concerns. We've learned how to step back and take a look at what the problem is. Sometimes we have to include our IT department, our help desk. Sometimes it is the CASA's help desk and the developers. And sometimes we just have to kind of figure out a different way to do it because it's not working. So we've become experts in a sense, and we're still learning. We're not at the top of our game yet. And we've also been able to accommodate students with no computer and only a smartphone, which they can use for classes, but it is not conducive for testing. We've learned how to accommodate students with disabilities. We have students who are visually challenged, and that presented us quite a challenge to try to figure out how to work with that individual because coming to campus was not an option. And we've been successful with that. We've learned to accommodate students with unacceptable computer hardware. And then the last thing that we didn't know we were going to encounter until school started, one of the internet speed for the testing has to be at least 2 megahertz. And when school started, a lot of people's internet got affected by it and the process slowed way down. And so the interruptions in internet were incredible. And even my internet at this point was wonderful. But now I've noticed in the last month, I've had where it kind of slows way down. So I don't know if I would be able to test online. But we've worked around that by finding different times of the day when the internet is used less. We've done a lot of nighttime testing, and we've even extended some of our testing times to be Saturday, and in some rare cases on Sunday. Next slide. So some tips that I can offer to you is to be patient. Not everybody is an expert in using a computer to begin with, and then throw in a testing package and all of its specifications. It becomes very difficult for people who have had no or little computer experience. Be flexible. You know, if it doesn't work one way, you got to kind of shift and think about doing it a different way. And if it doesn't work that way, you got to kind of shift and think about doing it a different way. And learn as much, and for those of you that are not testing and maybe thinking about going into the remote world, learn as much as you can before you start testing the first student. Role play with your coworkers. These are 2 very key things that we did with all of the staff, was we role played with coworkers. We learned a lot of the glitches. We learned a lot of the problems by doing it with coworkers rather than setting it up with the students. And after doing that for a while, then we decided, okay, now it's time to jump in and accept what happens as a learning experience. We had to, at some point, jump in and just accept what happens as a learning experience, because otherwise we'd still be practicing with our coworkers at this point. And lastly, don't give up. Perseverance is the key. And when you persevere, you're going to find ways to accommodate the students, to kind of work with them. Be very creative in what you come up with. Next slide. Challenges. One of the biggest challenges that we've faced is finding out that the student does not have the right computer equipment. Chromebooks are an absolute no-no. We have yet to figure out how to use the Chromebook because there's this thing called kiosk mode that the computer has to be set in. And kiosk mode cannot be used on a computer. So for example, your child's computer, because it's owned by somebody else. Kiosk can only be your own personal computer where you're kind of the administrator. So we've kind of avoided using Chromebooks for testing. And we're encouraging people to do Macs or laptops, if they could borrow one for a couple hours, you know, and we've had students go out and purchase the equipment because they knew they were going to need it. And that's not something we recommend, but it is something that they were doing. Another challenge was lack of computer knowledge and skills. Some of our older adults, some of our older students didn't even know how to operate a mouse. Their son or their daughter might have given them a computer with a mouse pad for them to roll around and try to move it. So we've had to take time with that individual and working with them and showing them all of the different features that they would be using. And all of this led to being very time consuming. And in some cases it could take from 1 hour, and in other cases it could take up to 3 hours per student. And this is where being very patient and going through step by step, that is so key in this whole new world that we live in. Another challenge was canceled testing appointments. We have students who would set up an appointment and then cancel because they had to work, because they didn't have a quiet home environment, because they had children. A number of different reasons why they could not test at that point. And so we would reschedule them for a different time. And one of my staff just recently had scheduled an appointment with a student. She had scheduled one, they canceled, and then she scheduled again and canceled because work was getting in the way, and then the house environment was not conducive. And so finally it was decided that maybe Saturday morning at 9 o'clock would be good. And so my staff member got up at 9 o'clock or got up before 9 o'clock, I should say, got ready, looked at her email, and found out that the student had canceled. She was not a happy camper at that point. But I said, well, what did you learn from that? And she said, nothing. I'd do it again for the student's sake. So, you know, being flexible, being patient, understanding goes a long way. And then the home environment with the possible disruptions, no matter how hard you try. If you have little kids behind a closed door, if you have a husband, you could be in the room with the door closed, and inevitably something will come up where you get interrupted and the door flies open while you're trying to do the test. And so we have to stop the test at that point and then wait for the disruption to go away, and then we can start the test again. And then another challenge that was just brought to my attention, which is not listed here, is the other piece of it is, how do we know for sure that the student's not cheating? And that was one of the questions is, you know, what do you do in a situation when you have an idea that the student may be cheating? You have to know, but you can stop the test at any given time. Next slide, please. So in this world, face-to-face testing is still our preference, but we now know that we can survive in the virtual world. And so we continue to test students, and we're going to continue through. We are not going back face-to-face anytime soon. And so we will continue to do the virtual world and the virtual testing. And we're going to keep learning in this process, and we're going to keep finding new ways to do things, and we will survive. Next slide. Any questions?
Mary, there are a couple of questions that I have. Well, other people may be wanting to enter their questions in the Q&A box.
Okay.
The first one is, can we proctor the CASAS remotely?
Yes. That's exactly, we are using the CASAS test and the CASAS goals. And both of those you can proctor remotely, yes.
Okay, and the second question was, what was the process for contacting students to set up appointments to test?
This is in our learning process. Initially, we had started out with just a phone call. And then we were all given phones from the college, but the phones were not identified as Elgin Community College. So we quickly learned that if we text the student and said, "Hi, my name is Mary. I will be calling you from Elgin Community College from this number." Then when you called the student, they were more likely to answer the phone. Because in this world of scams and political and other phone calls that you don't want to answer, unknown numbers, using the text message to introduce yourself and then calling the student to set up an appointment. Sometimes we used email in addition to that, but usually by phone.
Okay, and another one is if a student doesn't have access to a computer, will you meet the student at a public place?
We have not had to do that. We are fortunate that we have the testing center, and the student would have to the student makes an appointment to go to the testing center in a face-to-face situation. So at that point, the testing center would become involved. We would not be meeting the student in any public place.
Okay, and I don't see any additional questions. If you all think of anything while LWEA 7 is doing their presentation, I'm sure Mary would be happy to entertain any of those questions following. I know sometimes people take a little while to process. So thank you, Mary, for presenting and sharing your knowledge with us. At this time, I would like to have LWEA 7, Charles Townsend, Amelia Jackson, and Dennis Bird join us to share with us what LWEA 7 is doing for testing.
Thank you, Bevan. Our team is extremely excited to be here today to share information on how we transition our services virtually in the wake of COVID-19. My name is Charles Townsend once again, and I'm the Center Director for the Mid-South American Job Center. It's been a team effort at Employment and Employer Services to make transition and brainstorm on how we could best serve our customers, who we know have a significant need for services at this moment in time during the pandemic. I'm joined today by two of my colleagues at Employment and Employer Services, Amelia Jackson, our Business Service Representative, and Dennis Bird, our Associate Career Coach. Amelia, can you give us a quick overview of your perspective, role, and experience?
Absolutely. Thank you, Charles. Good morning, everyone. Once again, my name is Amelia Jackson. I am the Business Services Representative for the Mid-South American Job Center, located right here in the South Side of Chicago. And simply put, my job every day, all day, is business development and talent acquisition. I go out and I work with our career coaches to identify job seekers for particular businesses or companies that I go to obtain to partner with us so that they can hire these WIOA candidates that we have. And speaking of those career coaches, I would like to introduce you to my colleague, Dennis Boyd, who is the Associate Career Coach. He's going to tell you a little bit about himself. Dennis.
Thank you, Amelia.
Dennis, if you have two things open, please mute one of them so that we can hear you on your computer.
Yes, we can hear you, Dennis.
Amelia, and as she stated, I am an associate career coach at the South Suburban Cook County American Job Center, and my role in the company is first an eligibility specialist, so I can provide a little bit of insight on some of the questions that customers have about eligibility. And since April, I've been the host of the virtual WIOA orientations, and have been able to provide feedback again from a lot of the questions that customers have in regards to the process of WIOA. And with that said, I'll hand it back over to Charles.
Thank you, Dennis. Next slide, please. NES, basically, the topics we're here to provide today. Why are we here? Okay, we're here to provide information on how we transition from face-to-face to our virtual services. We're also here to offer insights into our virtual orientation process, and we're here to discuss how we prepare customers for our virtual interviews. Towards the end, we will give a little feedback on how we navigate individuals through the testing process as far as preparation. Also, we also want to share our insights with the online virtual process. Next slide, please. As we think back on the last 6 months, I can assure that we can agree it has been quite an adventure for everyone dealing with COVID-19. At Employment and Employment Services, we became aware of this potential for stay-at-home order in Illinois the week of March 16th. The news was confirmed when that order was issued on Friday, March 20th, which ended up being our last day we operated as normally as we would have. In a matter of days, the Employment and Employment Services leadership and management team worked together to get all of our staff set up to work remotely. Our president and CEO, Larry Fitzpatrick, initiated a weekly town hall meeting to convene all of our staff from all of our various programs and locations. On that initial town hall, he gave us that new mantra, doing business differently during COVID-19. Our goal since March has been to adjust our service delivery model. We're not eliminating or limiting our services for our customers. I will say that once again. We are not limiting or eliminating customers' services for our customers. We're finding new ways to deliver. I'll be honest, it has not been easy and it hasn't been perfect. Like everyone, we're all learning how to do this the new way. We're seeing how resilient our customers are. We're finding out how resourceful our staff is. And we're also evolving with the demands of the times each week. To be honest with you, we have a lot of individuals that may have numerous problems when it comes to living in a remote world. Internet access may be suspect. Not having the proper equipment and so forth. So we have numerous issues that we deal with. Some people are not familiar with how to utilize the equipment or having the right platforms in order. But we'll go over that more in detail. In COVID-19, in spite of having this many challenges, it's presented us with some opportunities. We've been able to work much more collaboratively across the WEO programs and locations and centralize the way we're offering orientations and job readiness training. Next slide, please. To be honest, a lot has changed since March. At Employment and Employee Services, we've evolved from an at-home work model to a blended in-office remote work model. While we're not open to the public as of this time, our staff is back in the offices on a staggered work schedule. At most of our locations, we offer services in person when needed. Those services are by appointment only, and health protocol is always observed at all times. And when I say the health protocol is always observed at all times, we practice social distancing by remaining 6 feet apart, and we wear a mask at all times. And that's one of the few things that's changed from how it used to be face-to-face. We had numerous traffic coming through the American Job Center. Now it's sparingly at best. Next slide, please. As you all know, the first step in taking advantage of WEO services is actually going through an orientation. Wherever you may go, you have to go through an orientation. We knew the need for a virtual orientation process was critical very early on. Our phones were constantly ringing off the hook, and our inboxes were full of requests from people who had lost their jobs and wanted job placement assistance. We worked with our funder, the Chicago Cook Workforce Partnership, to develop an online orientation process. 6 months in, we're continually tweaking the process, and we're constantly learning how we could be more efficient. I'm going to hand it over to my colleague, Mr. Dennis Bird, to explain in further detail on how we're delivering our virtual orientations. Dennis Bird has been a key player in offering our virtual orientations. He's offered them in person at the South Suburban Cook County American Job Center prior to the pandemic. Now he offers them twice a week online and is our customer's first point of contact into the WIO program. At this time, Mr. Dennis.
Thank you, Charles. I want to spread the word about WIO. It's valuable information out to the public, and we do that by marketing. The first step of getting job seekers to participate in our orientations is by making sure they know that they are available and are clear on how to access them. We put a lot of effort into marketing our virtual events by emailing and providing hard copies of our NES WIO virtual orientation flyer, which gives customers step-by-step instructions on how to go onto our website to register for our WIO orientations. We promote the WIO virtual orientations via the NES company website, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn, which have daily posts to let people know of dates and times of online events. We also send weekly emails to all customers and partners to invite them to our online events. Next slide, please.
Dennis, we're having a little bit of a difficult time.
Representative of the WIO orientations in person, I can say that the actual content of our virtual orientations does not differ much from what was offered in person prior to COVID-19. We explain in the orientations how services have changed due to COVID-19 and are now being delivered virtually. We explain what will be covered in WIO orientations. We explain services available through WIOA, and we talk about the Cook County American Job Center partner agencies. We are intentional about explaining how services are offered virtually to manage customers' expectations. We are also very clear about timelines and how customers can expect to move through the process based on their goals. What has changed quite a bit is our process post-orientation. We now require all who participate in orientation to take an online survey if they want to pursue enrollment in the program. The survey link is shown on the screen here. It is designed to be quick and easy for customers to complete. It provides us with an idea of the job seeker's goals. If they're looking for training, if they're looking for direct placement, do they have a specific American Job Center location that they would prefer to register at? What is their recent job history? The survey data is then pulled by our team and distributed to our associate career coach team at each of our American Job Center locations. Our team reaches out to each customer by phone and or email within 3 business days of a customer completing the survey. Being the host of the virtual orientations for the last few months, I take a lot of time to explain our new virtual enrollment process by answering questions at the end of each orientation. And it's pretty much trying to prepare the customer for some of the things that they should expect, like creating a customer profile on Career Connect, uploading documents, and using the Illinois WorkNet website to search for the over 1,000 training programs that the grant covers. We know many of our customers are under a lot of stress right now, and we always try to be mindful of that. And we offer much information as possible to be clear about what the program is, how we can help, what is required of our customers. And honestly, since I've been hosting the virtual orientations, I don't get many questions about info that is unclear to individuals. Most of the questions that I get are about eligibility, being eligible outside of receiving link or unemployment, and our favorite, creating that profile and uploading those eligibility documents. Next slide, please. We've offered orientations twice a week since April. We stagger the dates and times in an effort to make it easy for job seekers to find the time that works for them. You can visit our calendar on our website and register if you are interested in seeing how we are offering those orientations. All of our October events are listed on our calendar. We've had a lot of interest in virtual orientations to date, and here's a quick rundown. The virtual orientation attendees thus far have been 1,205. The customers requesting ITAs have been 727. The customers requesting only coaching have been 145. and ENES's American Job Center enrollments in WIOA have been 1,094. We look forward to the opportunity to continue to enroll the customers. This gives us an opportunity to really demonstrate our mission and commitment to those we have served. Next slide, please. So some of the lessons that we've learned along the way, and Mary talked about a lot of these in the very beginning. Many of the customers, a lot of the people that are coming through the WIOA program are interested in training through an ITA. We see that uploading documents has been a challenge for many of the job seekers we serve. Internet access is an issue, like she mentioned. Lack of technology and the ability to use the technology effectively are some of the things that we've come across that people have to deal with. Some of the customers have language barriers. We understand that, but what I try to do, being the host of the virtual orientations, I always provide my email address at the end of the orientation, and I always let customers know that if they wanted a copy of that orientation, it's available for them just in case they were unclear on anything that was presented. And of course, we are continuing to make adjustments to our process. So I'll be happy to take any questions about our virtual orientations at the end of our presentation. But for now, I will hand it back over to Charles.
Thank you, Dennis. I want to give a big sincere thank you to Dennis Bird. He's been really instrumental in getting his virtual orientation process going and has worked collaboratively with all our staff across all 4 AJC locations ENES operates to coordinate the needs of our customers. With the onset of COVID-19 meant that we've also had to rethink on how we offer our customers job readiness training and how we're preparing them to interview, given that many of them are now conducted virtual. All of our JRTs are now online, and you can see our calendar for the topics in which we cover. All sessions are open to the public and are live, so participants can actually ask our career coaches questions and get real-time answers. Today, we're going to focus on one aspect of our JRT in particular, how we're preparing our customers for virtual interviews. I'm going to hand it over to Ms. Amelia Jackson, one of our business services representatives who was a member of my team at the Mid-South American Job Center. Amelia Jackson was on top of this need immediately for our customers right after the pandemic hit. She began offering virtual interview workshops to our customers in early April. So at this time, I present to you Ms. Amelia Jackson.
Thank you, Charles. Once again, it's a pleasure to speak with you this morning, everyone. Thank you. We are actually going to shift to the next slide for me. Thank you. All right. And as Charles mentioned, we hit this dead on at the beginning, starting in March. In April, we created a series called Landing the Job Virtually, where we prepared our customers, in addition to our normal JRT courses, as well as our job clubs. We had this platform, I created this platform to help our job seekers really gauge the virtual platform, the virtual atmosphere, because it was a time to pivot. And during this time, we wanted to make sure that our customers were prepared not only for the virtual interviews, but they were prepared to how to navigate the virtual landscape. We wanted them confident so that they would be ready for those virtual interviews. We wanted to make sure that they overcame technology barriers, as well as being comfortable with the various virtual interview platforms such as HireVue, Microsoft Teams, or Google Meets, and to understand the expectations that employers had as it related to, or as it relates to, the virtual landscape. So we're going to dive into it. Let's get into it right now. Next slide, please. So again, these were times of uncertainty. We're still in times of uncertainty. We are in a pandemic. And in this pandemic, it's an opportunity that has been presented to us. And that's that opportunity to shift, to pivot. And so what we like to do, and as we work with, I'm a business services representative who works with our career coaches. What we like to do is to make sure that our customers are prepared and well equipped to tackle this new virtual landscape strategically. And that starts with the basics. So we want our customers to understand that they need to outline and be intentional about it. What is it that they want to do as it relates to their jobs, as it relates to their careers? And outlining that, assessing that, writing that down, what type of risk can they take during this time that's going to make sense, especially as it relates to transferable skills. This may be a time to move from manufacturing into IT. Well, how do we do that? Well, let's see how that can work with your transferable skills. It's all about taking intelligent risks. So you know what risks are, but intelligent risk, and I got this coin from one of our companies that we partner with, Relativity, which is an IT software firm. Intelligent risk are risks that are a little bit more strategic than just taking the risk, just taking that leap, all right? You wanna make sure that you are being strategic about the leap that you're taking, about the risk that you're taking. With that, you want to be able to identify the industries or the companies or corporations that are very viable right now. Who has laid off? Who is doing well? Who's thriving in this particular pandemic? So if you're going into manufacturing, well, what manufacturing companies are doing well? Who has laid off, right? Or who is who's the manufacturer of the need that we have during this pandemic, like toilet paper or cleaning products or candy, such as some type of CPG company, which is a consumer products and goods company. You have to be able, or the customer, the job seeker has to be able to identify those things to move forward within the next steps before they even get to that virtual interview. And then they have to research those companies. So they have to identify those goals. They have to research the companies that they are interested in that align with those goals. And then they have to look at the job descriptions of the particular companies that they're interested in, and then tailor their resumes and cover letters to those particular job descriptions. And then they can submit their application to the company in which they're interested in. And then hopefully the door has opened for them to receive an interview. And in this particular climate, a virtual interview. Next slide, please. Now let's break down the virtual interview versus face-to-face. I believe many of you already know what a face-to-face interview is. And what we do is we make sure that our job seekers understand the difference and why it's important to tackle a virtual interview almost the same way you would tackle a face-to-face interview. So we go over that electronic is needed, whether it is a laptop, whether it's a computer, whether it's a tablet, whether it's a mobile device like I have here. They're going to have to understand that they're going to need an electronic device to conduct their interviews. It's going to happen remotely, whether it's at home or at a coffee shop. You want to make sure that you are in a place where there are no distractions so that you can actually conduct the interview with confidence, and you're prepared, and you can focus directly on the actual recruiter or the interviewer. There are different types of interviews. We teach them that there is one-way interview and there is the traditional two-way interview where you are actually speaking with the hiring manager or you're speaking with the recruiter. Let's dive into one-way interviews. An example of a one-way interview, I don't know if all of you are familiar with the platform HireVue. Well, we recently, this summer, along with our partner sectors, and along with the Cook County Workforce Partnership, we hosted an actual job seminar as well as a screening session for Blue Cross and Blue Shield. And one of my roles was to go over the HireVue process and to teach those job seekers about how to utilize HireVue and to go over the different steps. in downloading and playing with the different features and understanding that the one-way interview is typically you're not speaking with the hiring manager, you're not speaking with the recruiter, you're talking directly to a computer, and it's typically timed. It's about 2 minutes for each behavioral type of question that is being asked, and that's sent back to those to review it so that they can bring you back in for either another interview or offer you the job. Well, what's interesting is one of our own customers or one of our own job seekers from the Mid-South American Job Center, she actually participated in the process, and she received a virtual interview request from none other than Blue Cross Blue Shield through who? HireVue. So we went over the HireVue process. I had some extra conversations with her, did some mock interviews with her, and guess what? She landed the job, and she landed the job virtually. So congratulations to that particular client. Some of the other things that we go over is the appearance. We go over with our clients or our customers the why it's important to treat this particular type of interview the same way you would treat a face-to-face interview. You have to have your business suit. Business attire is key. Depending upon the company, some companies like IT companies will be a little lax, but you still want to be professional. So professionalism is key. You want to still monitor that. In the same way that you do that, you want to make sure that your virtual background is clear of any distractions. The cat that likes to crawl across your screen or crawl across your back, yeah, you might want to put him out. The dog, put him out. You know, make sure that there are no distractions. Your lighting is key. Your audio is on. And so we make sure that they are prepared in those particular aspects. Sometimes the basics help. The basics in the same way for a virtual interview is the same as the face-to-face. And we all are familiar with face-to-face. No electronic is necessarily needed. You have to travel to the place, the location of the business to conduct that interview. It is typically live one-on-one or with a group panel. And of course, your appearance is still the same. Professionalism is key because first impressions are really important. Next slide, please. Now, again, we have gone over various technological challenges, things that could go wrong during the your interview or pre-interview. So we want to make sure that they're downloading all of the platforms that they're utilizing, whether it's HireVue, Google Meets, Microsoft Teams, Skype, Zoom, like the platform we're on, and they can kind of play with that. It's important to download that software prior to. So you want to encourage your job seekers to do the same, and also encourage them to take this virtual interview seriously. Some of the, I give examples, and I give examples a lot via our webinars with actual real-time companies that give the do's and don'ts, because sometimes it's better to hear it from the company than it is from us. And so that kind of allows them to kind of see the bigger picture of why it's important to make sure that everything that we're teaching them comes to fruition. It's also still important to go with the basics. You are interviewing the company just like they're interviewing you. So research the company and those particular job opportunities. Make sure that your appearance is key. We teach them that, making sure that the camera is on point, meaning that right now I am talking to you via the camera. I am not looking down. I glance every now and then, but I'm not focused on the presentation. I'm focused on the camera, which means I'm focused on you. And so we teach them that so that they are not distracted from looking and paying attention to the interviewer. And the interviewer, it looks as if you're speaking directly to the interviewer, and the interviewer is speaking directly to you and the job seeker. And then we coach on reading the cues. So being able to assess the landscape of that virtual interview. What is the interviewer thinking? Well, they may not say anything, but you can read facial expressions. You can read when the eyebrow goes up and they're intrigued. So understanding how to really navigate that. And that takes a little time, but we have those virtual offerings and those webinars to actually coach them on that. Next slide, please. I said a lot. And I brought you a lot of information on today. And in summary, job seekers must map out their plan of action so that you want to teach them and work with them on how that plan of action should look like. They should be tracking their progress, and you should be working with them on tracking that progress. Giving them time in between the time of application and in between the time that they should be hearing back. I say about 2 or 3 weeks, really 2 weeks. After 2 weeks, if they don't hear anything from anybody, because even if they have in between, may have gone on LinkedIn, tried to reach out to someone who knows a little bit more about the company and the job that they're applying to, if they have not received any type of feedback, then it may be some time to recalibrate. So teaching them how to recalibrate and to work with the career coaches or the business services representatives so that we can help them through that particular process. Well, I've said enough. And if you have any questions or any concerns, I will be happy to address them at the end of our presentation. But until then, I'm going to hand it back over to my boss, Charles Thompson. Charles.
Thank you, Amelia Jackson, for your tireless and continuous work.
You are welcome.
During COVID-19, we've had to assess our customers virtually. It's changed from face to face now. So we've had to use numerous platforms to basically assess our customers. We've used Microsoft Duo, Zoom, Microsoft Teams, or the good old-fashioned telephone. That works as well. For individuals that are looking for training and they don't have any idea or any resources on how to research, we automatically refer them over to illinoisworknet.com, and there's a fabulous resource. For those individuals that need to strengthen their CASA's-taking skills, if they need to shore those skill sets up, we can refer them over to Khan Academy, which is a free website. We also use Prove It at Aztec as well to shore up skills. Next slide, please. At this time, we're happy to take any questions on behalf of Employment and Employer Services and our CEO, Larry Fitzpatrick, our Associate Career Coach, Dennis Bird, and our Business Service Representative, Amelia Jackson, and myself. I would like to thank you for allowing us for the opportunity to speak today. Thank you once again.
Well, thank you so much. It looks like we have one question. So can you please provide clarification on the acronym for ITA?
The acronym for ITA stands for Individual Training Account. Those are the training accounts in which customers come in requesting for training, and we provide vouchers for.
Okay, are there any other questions? You still have a few minutes to post. If not, I'm going to turn it over to Christian.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I'm going to let Bevan monitor those questions as they're continuing to come in, if there is any. But I just want to close us out by saying thank you for joining us on this Wednesday morning and bearing with us as we are switching to the Zoom platform at our center, and any hiccups you experienced today, we do apologize for that, but thank you for bearing with us. And thank you to our presenters from Louisa 7 and from Elgin with Mary. Thank you so much for presenting today. We hope you learned a lot. And a couple of reminders. This webinar was recorded, and the presentation materials as well as the recording will be on our website, and I will post that in the chat. And it will also be on the Illinois WorkNet's website as well, so you can find it there. And tomorrow you will receive a follow-up survey. And if you could provide us with any feedback about this webinar or any upcoming webinars or topics you would like to see, our planning committee would really appreciate that. And with that, Bevan, are there any other questions that came in? Bevan might be having some issues. Rena, do you see any other questions that have come in?
There are no more questions listed.
Okay, thank you so much. Well, thank you, everyone. You all have a great rest of your Wednesday.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, you too.